So, this is the first time I've said my number one first. And this is the first time we're not going to have the same number one. Because our sci-fi list, we both agreed 2001: Space Odyssey. For crime list, we agreed to Godfather Saga.
Oh, I'm so very disappointed that we don't have the same number one.
I have no regrets. Your number one is my number 6. I'm sticking by that. Sorry. So my number one choice for the greatest fantasy film of all time is Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal.
I've never seen that.
Wow. Max von Sydow stars as Antonius, a Swedish knight disheartened by his battles in the Crusades. He returns to his country to find it ravaged by the plague known as Black Death, of course. And upon his return, he encounters death, personified by a pale black-robed man. He doesn't have a scythe or anything. So Antonius challenges death to a game of chess, hoping to forestall his demise for the duration of the match. And that's the setup, really. And the rest of the film is his journeys sort of through the countryside to return home. He's in the country, but he keeps interacting with death at different times to resume their chess match. Sometimes death takes on different forms to trick him into revealing his next strategy. And there's a few other supporting characters as well. And they make some friends along the way. And the thing Ingmar Bergman does very, very well, he's practically a philosopher who found a video camera.
Yeah.
Because films like Cries and Whispers and Autumn Sonata, they're very much domestic things. And The Seventh Seal probably has the biggest questions to ask, without necessarily supplying answers.
Yeah.
About basically the end we all have to face, because we're all going to die one day. And this is about a knight who's basically having to face that very thing. He's in a death match with them. And the reason this does count as fantasy is the reason that you would count Greek mythology as mythology. Because to personify death as a figure, you couldn't have a story like this and raise these kind of questions without this fantasy element. And it's a great film. It's one of the greatest of all time.
I'll probably watch it.
Yeah, you better. And then next time we're on, we'll hear what you think. Yeah. No, this is a great movie. You're familiar with Max von Sydow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very young here.
Really?
Yeah, this is 1957. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably Ingmar Bergman's best film. The Bible's quite a big thing in terms of literature.
Yeah.
This should be like the Bible of movies.
That's a very big statement.
That's my point.
Excellent.
Now, it's an utter mystery to me what your number one is. We're finally gonna... Okay, so remember, my number 6... We actually skipped my number 6 because I wanted you to be able to rave.
Yeah. So much. Alright, my number one is Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth? What's that, Megan?
Labyrinthino Delfino.
Well done.
Thank you. It's directed by my favorite director of all time, Guillermo del Toro.
Okay.
I love him.
Of all time?
Of all time.
That's big.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Him and Ang Lee
Okay.
and Miyazaki. I like their talking.
Okay. You're really into fantasy films.
I really like them.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, what's Pan's Labyrinth about?
What's Pan's Labyrinth about? Okay, it's a Mexican-Spanish film. In a fairy tale, Princess Monona, whose father is the king of the underworld, visits the human world where sunlight blinds her and erases her memory. She dies. And after the king believes that her spirit will return to the underworld, and that's basically the setup for the whole movie. And after the setup, we meet the protagonist, Ophelia, played by Ivana Baquero, I think that's how you say it. Baquero. Who's traveling with her pregnant mother to meet basically the villain, Captain Vidal, played by Sergei Lopez, who is her new stepfather and the father of her mother's child. There's a large stick insect, which Ophelia believes to be a fairy, and she follows it into a labyrinth, and almost follows it into a labyrinth. She's stopped by Vidal's housekeeper, and that night the insect appears in her bedroom and becomes a fairy
Proper fairy.
and leads her into the labyrinth, and there she meets the Fawn, played by Doug Jones, who I love so very much.
Calm down. We both love Doug Jones. Deep breaths.
Who believes that she is the dead
Wow.
Princess Monona,
Yeah.
and gives her 3 tasks to complete before the full moon so she can go back to the underworld and become the princess. And he plays all the fantastical characters.
Yeah.
He plays the Fawn, he plays the hand guy,
The Pale Man.
the pale man, who's the best freaking scene of the whole.
I'll make this point again about the Academy. Doug Jones is an actor
Should
of
win everything.
a very specific order. It's his movements, and you can put anyone in makeup
Yeah.
and tell them to do whatever. He brings something. He channels something. It's not just the makeup
He
that empowered.
becomes-
Like if you put makeup on a specific actor, they'll feel empowered by that,
Yeah.
and just kind of act and figure, oh, I'm this character now.
Yeah.
But there's something within the movements and just raising his hand up with the eye. That one particular shot where he just raises his hand up.
Yeah.
That is. And it's an acting of a different sort, and the Academy is never going to give an Oscar to.
And he
People like
deserves
this.
12.
I think his performance as Pan,
Yeah.
the Fawn,
The Fawn.
is perhaps deserving of some sort of recognition. But the pale man, even though there's no dialogue there, just his
So
movements,
terrifying.
just the twitches of the fingers,
Yeah.
it is terrifying.
It's terrifying.
And this is a great movie. This is my number 6 choice. It's not just a fantasy world that
Yeah.
we're inhabiting. It really is. There's a lot of fascist and political.
Because it takes place right after
The Spanish Civil War.
yeah.
Yeah.
When the French are
and-
occupying.
For me, what this movie is about monsters in the fantasy world
Yeah.
and in the real world. Because this captain
He's a very, very bad
he's a
guy.
monster.
He's a horrible person.
Almost worse than the ones in her little.
He is
fairy
worse
tale
than the ones in the
Um,
real world because he's
Yeah,
not a monster.
and we do get both worlds. Like obviously, Ophelia takes center stage in
Yeah.
fantasy world too, but it's sort of I think of it as a coping mechanism to deal with
Yeah.
the adult world, a world that she's not probably quite afraid of.
Yeah. Well, because her mother is ill and she's pregnant and she's
Yeah.
meeting a new man that she doesn't know who's
Yeah.
now her father, and he's not very nice.
She has an imagination, and she uses that to
Escape.
retreat
And
to
she's
her own.
in the middle
imagination.
of the end of the Civil War, and he's like a captain, so he's after all the rebels and stuff. So
This film should have won Best Picture 2006.
should have won Best Picture.
It wasn't nominated. It was nominated Best Foreign Film and didn't win.
Such a
The use
beautiful
of
movie.
the use of color.
The color.
I think of the scene where she meets Pan for the first time,
Yeah.
and the moonlight. It's just a moonlit room. It's so gorgeous, and the Guillermo del Toro is one of the most pure imagination machines in Hollywood.
He is like a child when he makes movies.
Well, this is what I like about the fantasy genre. And first of all, this is not a film for kids.
No.
It's very violent, very bloody, and the pale man scene is very terrifying.
It's terrible.
You've probably heard this story where Guillermo del Toro was watching at the premiere and Stephen King sat next to him.
Yeah.
And that scene made Stephen King squirm.
Yeah.
And Guillermo del Toro was like, "That's better than winning an Oscar."
It is better than winning
Yeah.
an Oscar.
Well, when you make something that affects people,
Well,
that is probably people's
especially
goals.
Stephen King. He's the biggest horror writer of
The king of
ever.
horror. Yeah. But Guillermo del Toro, it's great to have
A giant
someone like
teddy
that
bear.
working.
I'm so grateful.
In an industry where everything's kind of ripped off.
Especially because he's Spanish.
Why? Especially because he's Spanish.
Well, because Spanish, Mexican movies and directors don't really get anywhere in Hollywood because...
More, I don't know, Alfonso Cuarón, who did Prisoner of Azkaban, Gravity.
Yeah, but
He's made it.
they're not like big,
No.
big directors. And Guillermo does a movie and like Pacific Rim comes to mind. That was one of the biggest movies of.
True. Like he's made it in Hollywood.
He's such a fabulous man, and I want to hug him.
Pan's Labyrinth is his best movie.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's a masterpiece
It is,
of imagination
and
and storytelling.
probably my favorite movie of all time.
That's a really big call. I mean, I found 5 others just in the fantasy genre that are
I
better.
love this movie so much.
I know you do.
You have no idea.
In Doug Jones, we
Doug
do think
Jones.
you should have won an Oscar.
I think you should have.
I think there should be a separate category for
There should
performances
be.
like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for vocal
There's so many
performances.
people that should deserve to win and
Yeah.
can't because
I know.
Doug Jones is also in Hellboy, which Gil Bierman also directed,
Yeah.
which
He-
are pretty movies.
This is another thing.
Dumb.
Doug Jones can obviously inhabit any kind of creation.
Yeah.
But when it's Guillermo del Toro's creation, and when Guillermo del Toro is the puppet master,
Yeah.
Doug Jones makes a very good puppet. I don't mean that as
No,
in a bad way.
it's a compliment.
The two of them are dynamic.
And the Sergei, however you say it, Lopez, Captain Vidal, he is a great bad guy. He's
a
the
very
villain.
memorable villain.
He's the villain.
Yeah.
The pale man
And he doesn't overplay it.
and
There's
he's
always temptation
terrifying.
when being a villain like this is to overplay it or underplay it so much that you think, oh, I'm being really, really subtle. This is so much more terrifying. He finds just the right note.
Yeah, he is terrifying.
Yeah.
He's a scary man.
Yeah, but this is a great movie.
It's
But I'd still Where the Wild Things Are, Wings of Desire, Wizard of Oz, Beauty and the Beast, and The Seventh Seal. I think are better. If you disagree, comment.
give this a thumbs up if you agree with me.